The Honourable Member for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, Salmon River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise today to speak to Bill 149, the Mineral Resources Act. And I was very interested to sit in law amendments the day that everybody came to present. I noticed that there were 16 presenters there about this bill, and only 2 of them were in favor of the bill as it stands in full. And most of the rest of them, well, all the rest of them wanted amendments made to the bill, and are very disappointed that the government has not listened to their concerns and has not acted upon their suggestions for amendments. So our caucus, the NDP caucus, is therefore disappointed that the government has decided not to adopt the amendments proposed by the Nova Scotia Nature Trust. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, even Mark Parent, who was a former environment minister in this House of Assembly, spoke, and he took part in EGSPA, and he said that Nova Scotians should be outraged to hear that this protected land is no longer going to be protected from the mining industry when it really only is equal to 0.5% of the land that we're talking about, and he felt that it should be, in fact, protected. So through their proposed amendments, the Nature Trust has attempted to find a balance between economic development and environmental stewardship. They're not calling for any land included in a trust to be automatically removed from mineral resource development, but rather they simply want to provide a mechanism by which the minister could withdraw land trust protected areas from mineral resource exploration and development. This withdrawal mechanism, Mr. Speaker, already exists for various purposes, such as temporary closures during the designation process for wilderness areas and nature reserves, and geoscience research. Private land conservation through the work of non-governmental land trusts is widely recognized as making a significant contribution to biodiversity conservation and protected areas in Nova Scotia. And biodiversity, Mr. Speaker, is very, very, very important in the health of the environment of any province or any jurisdiction. 70% of land in Nova Scotia is privately owned. 85% of it in coastal areas are privately owned. Therefore, we should not underestimate the importance of the work of groups such as the Nature Trust. In fact, land trusts are critical to the government's ability to meet its own environmental goals and commitments. And in fact, I've noticed that the Minister of the Environment, the current minister, has made various notices of motion of land that she's been very proud of people in her area contributing to this. So, for instance, she gave a wonderful, glowing recommendation to Hope Harrison and Terry Harrison, who donated land to the province that increased the size of a planned nature reserve by nearly 2/3, protecting a remnant patch of intact mixed forest in an agricultural and managed woodlot landscape, an underrepresented kind of property in our protected areas system, Mr. Speaker. And she was also very proud that this donated land was the woodlot linked to the farm that Hope and her late husband Donald lived in near McCann. Land that had been in the family for 4 generations, land that Donald had carefully managed and protected from clear cutting, and it's now a beautiful area of mature forest with older red spruce, yellow birch, white ash, and other hardwoods near the confluence of the McCann River and the River Hebert. And in fact, this long-term protection of this land was made in the memory of Donald and Alistair Harrison by Donald's wife, Hope, and Alistair's son, Terry, to carry on the legacy of care and concern that they had for the land. So the minister was very pleased and thankful that this beautiful and memorable contribution to Nova Scotia's protected areas has been acknowledged, and she wanted to acknowledge the generosity and efforts of private landowners who choose to help protect our unique and important natural areas. Now, I'd like to table that, Mr. Speaker, because in fact, what the Nature Trust does is it gets land donated by people such as this who would like to see the land protected for generations. And they were saying in law amendments that they are afraid that with this bill now passing the House, people will not know that this land will in fact be protected. So they will therefore be hesitant to actually contribute any land. Now, this is a problem, Mr. Speaker. So protecting lands of outstanding conservation value is important from an environmental standpoint, but these natural assets can also contribute to our economy through tourism and through recreational activities. Non-governmental land trusts have faced a significant impediment to private land conservation. That is, once a land trust is secured, the land is still potentially at risk from the impacts of mineral exploration and development. So, updating the Mineral Resources Act can actually be seen as an opportunity to address this issue. However, the government decided not to act on this opportunity. And I have yet to hear anyone from the government side of the House speak as to why the amendments proposed by the Nature Trust would not work. At law amendments, one government member suggested that protecting land trusts could perhaps be done through the Department of the Environment. Why? Why would you not allow a withdrawal mechanism for the Natural Resources Minister pertaining to the exploration and development of natural resources? It makes no sense to make that suggestion. The Nature Trust has proposed thoughtful amendments that propose a workable solution to situations where there could be overlap between land trusts and potential mineral exploration and development. The proposed withdrawal mechanism allows for ministerial discretion. That is, it would be up to the minister to decide if land held in trust should be removed from potential exploration and development. And again, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about a very, very minimal, very small percentage of land in Nova Scotia, 0.5%. So, in fact, while we were there, one of the gentlemen from the mining corporation suggested that in Nova Scotia is, in fact, the second province in Canada to have protected as much protected land as we do right now, which we're aiming for 13%. And under our government, we were able to reach close to 12% of protected lands, for which all kinds of people across the country gave us kudos, and we're very, very pleased that the CAPW, for instance, we're very pleased that we were well on our way to doing this and protecting this important land. And so the gentleman from the mining corporation suggested that this is not a good thing, that we're second in Canada in having this protected land that they could not get at for mineral resources. But in fact, I say, Mr. Speaker, we should be proud of this fact. And in fact, the Minister of Environment, I commend her because she is proud of this fact, and she's said so several times in this House. Several times in this House, she has talked about how important this is, and I believe this is something that we need to continue to address here in Nova Scotia. So, in conclusion, overall, the amount of land held in trust, as I said, in Nova Scotia is very small. Yet, for these conservation groups, the significance of these proposed amendments, this cutting of the red tape as it is presented, cannot be underestimated. These are the groups that actively seek donations of land and money to help protect our land, Nova Scotia's land of high conservation value, and further our environmental goals as a province. And again, our tourism. People want to come to Nova Scotia to see our beauty. They don't want to come to see just open pit mines. They want to come and see our beautiful historic buildings. They want to come and see the beauty of the province. And they want to come and see places that they've seen on television and in film. And they would come from all around the world to see it. In fact, just recently, I heard a story in Truro. Trailer Park Boys is in fact coming back. And that last year, there was a young woman from Germany who came, and they saw her standing at the side watching, and one of the crew members went up and said, "Oh, are you here for any reason? Were you waiting for somebody?" And she said, "Oh, no, I come from Germany, and I love Trailer Park Boys. It's my favorite show. All my friends watch it, and I come because I want to see Trailer Park Boys. I've come to Bible Hill, Nova Scotia, to see Trailer Park Boys." And so the crew members said, "Well, would you like to meet the Trailer Park Boys?" And she couldn't believe her ears. And she said, "I could come? I could meet these people?" And they said, "Yes." So they brought her on set, and they introduced her, and she had a great time chatting away with them. And then they said, "Would you like to be an extra on the show so that all your friends back in Germany can see you on the Trailer Park Boys?" So indeed, she spent several days. She changed her trip. She spent several days in Bible Hill, Nova Scotia, in a hotel, spending money on food and drinks probably, and things to eat, and a bed to stay in. And then she got to be an extra on the Trailer Park Boys, which is now seen all over the world. 200 different countries all over the world now watch Trailer Park Boys. And that's what I'm talking about the creative economy, and why that is important for them to see not only the beauty that Nova Scotia holds, but also anywhere where a show is shot, people are very interested and curious, and they want to come and see it. So, these conservation groups, it's very, very important to them to try and save these lands. They're trying to meet international standards as well for land conservation. And, I would like to say the NDP caucus supports the mining industry. We support any industry in Nova Scotia that adds to our GDP, including the film industry, which adds $180 million to the GDP. We value the 5,500 jobs in the mining industry, and we value the 3,200 jobs in the film industry. We also value the millions of dollars of economic activity that each of these industries generates year after year. And we recognize that this bill being proposed by the government makes changes that are supported by the industry. For example, changing the required renewal of exploration licenses from 1 year to 2 years. That makes sense. Raising the limit to begin mining production from 2 to 5 years. That makes sense. However, I believe accepting the proposed amendments of the Nature Trust would allow for a greater balance between mineral exploration and development and environmental stewardship. And I believe, as Nova Scotians, each and every one of us in this House should make that a priority. Especially with climate change, this is going to be a very, very urgent issue in the years to come. Again, all that is being proposed is for a discretionary withdrawal mechanism which the minister may or may not use. So it's clear that the amendments proposed by the Nature Trust has the endorsement of the environmental community. At law amendments, we heard from the Nature Conservancy of Canada, the Nova Scotia chapter of Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, and the chair of the Mercy Tobiatic Research Institute. All of these presenters gave their support to the amendments proposed by the Nature Trust. This is not a case of the environmental community versus development. It is the opposite. This is, in fact, working together if this government was far-sighted enough to be able to see that and act upon it. So, in fact, after more than 20 years, there has only been 0.5% overlap between land held in trust and active mineral claims. Our caucus recognizes the improvements in this bill as compared to the previous Mineral Resources Act. We know the government has a majority and that this bill will in fact pass, as have all of their other bills. And however, we believe the government is really missing an opportunity to address a long-standing issue regarding land trusts. The Nature Trust has proposed thoughtful amendments that seek to provide a workable solution going forward. And this government has given no feedback, absolutely zero feedback, regarding why they find a problem with these amendments and why they have ignored the proposed amendments. This, to me and to our NDP caucus, seems entirely unreasonable. Perhaps we should not be surprised, though. So therefore, in support of the amendments proposed by the Nature Trust, we will not be supporting this bill. Thank you.